Okay.
Where random items, incredibly rare items, will get put up on the black market auction house from time to time, and players bid on them, and things can get more expensive.
But they're not like
then 5 million gold,
just like collector's edition thing.
Yes, they are. Yeah, it's just incredibly rare things. But that's the only thing I can think of that could be more expensive. But I don't play World of Warcraft as much as, let's say, Raven, or haven't played World of Warcraft as much as, say, Raven. I
mean, after calculating that you needed to kill 1 billion boars to buy a dinosaur, I could make a dinosaur out of 1 billion boars.
Good luck with that endeavor. That's all I have to say.
That would be my my long-term goal in life, to make my own dinosaur. As the game has finally broken out in front of us, so we can, in theory, stop talking about dinosaurs if we want to.
Okay. Got ourselves a Hearthstone game. Watch posts online early on. This is good. And not the greatest follow-up, to be honest. Obviously, 2 watch posts could provide some disruption, but if you're not actually doing anything besides just increasing the cost of your opponent's cards, then what's even the point?
Yeah, I mean, eventually, it felt good, right? You get your peasant drained, so that's you've gained a mana in the mana race. But if you're not, like you say, if you're not doing anything, if you're just watching, like with the watch posts, then your opponent actually can get control of the board. And if they get a couple of minions down against this druid and they stick, Handlock is in such a great spot because they get to preserve their removal.
At least he's got something on board. But this is a pretty terrible hand for UchihaSaske as well. And eventually, UchihaSaske is going to have to remove these watch posts. That's the one thing about it. And then composting might be able to do some work once that scenario eventually props up. Don't really want to Mortal Coil this because, well, I guess you have to. It's the only way for him to remove it. But you don't want to because this card that you're going to draw, 6 mana, Spice Bread Baker. All right, gonna most certainly play out the Colt Neophyte here. Try and maybe contest these, but Tansoku's gonna protect it with a teacher's pet.
And actually, the ridiculousness of these watch posts going on for so long, even though it feels terrible, and I still think it's a terrible start, because it's gone so long and every card is affecting the opponent's hand nearly, it's actually getting there now, so that this composting might get something done.
Yeah. Just smiling. Yeah. Keep life tapping. I dare you.
What are you going to do it, kid? Are you going to play that card you drew? I don't think so.
Yeah. 4 mana Drain Soul. That's going to be tough to play.
Yeah, he's only got 3 mana, so it would be very tough to play on this turn. And then next turn, because he can't Drain Soul this turn, his next card's going to cost 1 million as well. So these 5 mana Teacher's Pets are suddenly the value cards in the game. Doing a greed check now. He's trying to work out whether he plays composting now or whether he just go for another Teacher's Pet and Org Merchant it and in you go.
Yeah, this is actually tough, right? In a weird way, I kind of like, because Soul Rend would be playable if it was picked up next turn. 6 mana would be the maximum that it would cost. You could trade, then give your Teacher's Pet Divine Shield, then Squirrel Composting.
That's an upgrade, probably.
No, he's just going to play the second Teacher's Pet. Just try and be resilient as possible against Soul Rend.
Yeah, I also think that composting on 2 watch posts and a minion or 2 isn't that exciting. Okay, Soul Rend, yes, but the watch posts can't get rid of themselves, so you do kind of leave it to your opponent to some degree, even though he's going to want to get rid of these because they are annoying him.
Oh, Jesus. His whole turn. Oh. There's still a watch post there. All right, Soul Rend, 5 mana. But now we have 3 attackable minions. This is perfect for an Arbra plus a composting. He's going to have reload. And this game seems incredibly over from my perspective. UchihaSaske just didn't really have anything to do early game, despite Tansoku having a slow start. So let's talk about the far watch posts allow you to take your time and build up an impressive board, an impressive enough board, and then just roll on from there.
Yeah, I think having 2 was a big deal here. Like exactly 1 watch post is kind of the bad sweet spot. Having 2 or 0, either getting going or just ruining all your opponent's cards so they can't ever be played. Yeah, big deal. You can see what it means. A win here will probably get you into the top 16. So nice to get that one on the board.
Yeah, nice. That matchup can seem pretty difficult because Warlock can pick apart your early board, and Soul Rend exists, right?
Yeah.
If a Soul Rend comes out, it becomes very difficult because then the high power cards can come out a lot quicker, and it just becomes really difficult for you to stick anything for the rest of the game. But Tansoku able to get that one done. I mean, this is just kind of the Libram Paladin mirror match waiting room at this point, though, is what it feels like.
Absolutely. It was a good play, though. The turn he had to make the decision, do I composting now or do I wait a turn? And I think he may have factored in the fact that Soul Rend was going to cost a fortune that turn, or depending where it was in the hand. And maybe just took the view, I'm going to take a risk here. I think I'm okay. And paid off beautifully.
It did. So Tansoku has Libram Paladin Face Hunter left remaining in the lineup. UchihaSaske still access to everything. Libram Paladin Handlock and OTK Demon Hunter. It's interesting because we talked about it a little bit, but he picked 2 of the most meta decks, right? With the OTK Demon Hunter and Handlock. Omitted Garrote Rogue from the lineup and instead included Libram Paladin and Quest Shaman. Crossroads Watch Post Quest Shaman. So quite the unique lineup, and I like seeing that as we get further and further into the tournament, these unique lineups having success. It gives me hope.
Gives you hope. What's hope for what?
Librams. Hope for Librams of hope. A Mutinous thrown in this thing as well. Got all the techs. Got a Rushrot Viper, a Moonfang, and a Mutinous. All at his disposal.
You ask your friends, like, I'm going to play Paladin, and they say, don't. And you say, no, I'm sorry, but I'm Paladin. Once a Paladin, always a Paladin. I'm going to do it. Which cards don't you like in all of Hearthstone? It's like, oh, Mutinous. Oh, that really messes me up. So, all right, Mutinous is in. What else messes you up in Hearthstone? Oh, that Moonfang can be awkward sometimes. Right, playing it. Just find some cards to put in your deck. And it's all going on in that deck, but it's obviously working because he's on 5-0.
Yeah.
Or 6-0 even. 5-1. I'll get there in a minute. How many more guesses do I have?
None. But you only needed 2. There were only 2 options.
5-1. All right, this is a slightly more calm version of Libram Paladin.
Yeah. It's got
that one noble mount.
Yeah, 1 noble mount and then 2 goody 2 shields is the difference. That's what makes up the tech cards for UchihaSaske. It takes the place of the Rushrot Viper and Mutinous, essentially. Other than that, though, the decks are incredibly similar. I mean, there's a certain amount of cards that you just are auto-includes in Libram Paladin to just make the deck function on any sort of reasonable level. So UchihaSaske on the play starts with Aldor Attendant. Tansoku going for the mid-game power swing with Banana Man and the Goody 2 shields.
Wait to read these.
And now this one's going to shape up.
That's good power swing. Like with the coin, just do nothing now and curve through your 3s. Don't really want to coin out the Murloc, right? Because then you're just stuck on turn number 2.
Yeah, it is a little bit awkward, though, because you assume that your opponent's going to have a turn 2 play no matter what it is, even if it's just hero power. And then you're coining a 2/2. And then your opponent gets to have a free turn 3, essentially. The Carol Rome, I think, is the big difference maker, because that allows for a swing back going into turn 4. So just Tansoku just hoping that UchihaSaske just doesn't really have much development. Ooh, and that's the worst one! Actually, well, that plus Libra of Hope.
So half the deck.
Yeah. Could have hit Hand of Adults, could have hit Libra of Wisdom.
I think it's really powerful, but I'm not sure it's going to get the job done. Just look at this curve that UchihaSaske has next. He's just got curving through some of the biggest monsters in all of Hearthstone.
Alright, Libram of Justice here. Try and get this Moonfang down safely.
Imagine if your Mutinous eats your opponent's Moonfang. You should get the abilities as well, shouldn't it, really? It'd be amazing.
Yeah, then it'd be broken. It eats
seven.
Oganoth.
What are you going to do about it?
It's just an 8/12 that hits for 16, essentially. That sounds cool.
It'll be fine. We can make that work.
Yeah.
Just be great. I want that card. Maybe make it cost 8 just to balance it.
Yeah.
All right. So
the curve here, Tansoku was hoping with this curve that Kero would come down and swing tempo, but because there's not really something good to trade it into, it's just going to go on the board with these small things, get these Librams rolling. Then next turn has the option for either Kero Rome or Devout Pupil.
the nonsense continues. I think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to be in time if he just curves through these crazy things, right? There's not much damage coming in.
Moonfang, Devout Pupil, and then Mutinous and Varian. Cool.
Yeah.
Game is solved.
Because surely Tansoku can't survive that lot without playing Barov. For a start, Mutinous might eat Barov, and that's kind of the end of things.
Yeah, well, we're still a couple turns away from that. Might just... Okay, so this is a turn where Tansoku... the Libram costs 1. Could just double trade and then Carol Rome.
May the light grant you peace.
I wonder if he's thinking of... Yeah, he can't really afford to Barov because he knows the type of thing that is coming in the future turns, but I bet he would want to.
Yeah. Oh, and this is also smart because Carol Rome will reduce the cost of the Libram, can then get essentially an additional Libram cast to make this Devout Pupil cheaper. Because it would have been going back to hand anyway. So just gets a -1 cost for the Devout Pupil. Good sequencing.
And here they all come, TJ. One after another. The marching army of numbers. And they are some big numbers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're big. Big. Okay, I mean, I guess that's kind of big. It does reduce the cost of Libram of Justice. Doesn't have a hope yet. I mean, it's like... I guess it's probably going to eat the Lord Barov.
May the light.
I wonder if he even plays it next turn. I don't even know if you can hope to hit something because he'll know that one card in the hand is drawn from the Holy Spell. Another card... I guess there's still one card from the Bannerman. You can see how many it buffed. Yeah, he'll know that there's some minions here. I imagine it's going to be Devout Pupil turn. Can start off with Libram.
Okay.
Maybe you start off with Hand of... Either one's going to be free. I guess just wants the chance to draw a Holy Spell, because if he had gone with Libram first, and then discounted Hand of It All, and then used Hand of It All and had drawn a Holy Spell, he would have missed out on 1 reduction. So this is correct sequencing just for maximum efficiency. And yeah, I don't think Mutinous is good enough here.
Too slow. He's going to be too slow. 13, 14, 15 being faced down.
Blade Master Samuro.
Sure.
Could also throw in a Libra of Justice, but that's... Is there a way to do it if you hit with the weapon? You can do it without it, right? You attack the devout people with the weapon, then you Libram of Justice on the Aldor, and then play the Blade Master, then or not Libram of Justice, Libram of Wisdom, and then play it. That's exactly 6.
Yep.
So this sticks a minion on board, right? It keeps another 1/1 in play and gets to push 2 damage, but at the cost of a Libram of Justice. I think I might have preferred to hold on to it.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Someone's getting eaten next turn. Maybe they're not actually, because Varian's also really...
Yeah, Varian's almost certainly going to come down next turn.
Yeah. Good point. Well made.
And maybe that's why UchihaSaske decided to just use the Libram of Justice, because when would it be played, right? Because you're going to be playing Varian next turn, then you're going to have a lot of cards to fill your mana on the next turns. But it was already quite cheap. I don't know. It's difficult.
I'm sure he plays his deck better than I do at this point.
Oh yeah?
That's yeah. I'm willing to die on that particular hill, I think.
Okay. Good.
Right, now Tansoku has preserved resources pretty well in the early exchanges. Feels like he's a little behind, but nothing too disastrous yet.
Yeah, I could just play Libram of Hope here, and then throw a Libram on it, and then play a Goody 2 Shields. That works out just fine. Has Lord Brav plus the Blade Master Samuro combination if needed. But I don't think really needs to go for it now. Now a lot of options for UchihaSaske. Can start off with Bannerman, see what the draw is.
He can never catch Liadrin, right? So there's no point holding Mutinous for that particular eventuality.
Yeah, probably not. At this point, it's going to be played the turn that it's drawn. Could actually Mutinous, though, and use the animated broomstick to hopefully get through this Libram of Hope more easily.
Yeah, it's very hard to make the call, right? It depends. Does he think there's any minions in the opposing hand? Because otherwise Mutinous is kind of a bit sad. He's going to go for it.
He knows there's at least one buffed minion because of the Bannerman that was played. And there's Lord Brav. And that's actually a really clean trade with animated broomstick. And you trade both over and keep your Varian healthy.
Yep. Perfect numbers. Tansoku, yeah, what can you do? You queue into this in the Swiss, you have 2 minutes to look at your opponent's deck. You go, okay, cool. All the cards I don't like. So they don't play them. See what happens.
Doesn't have time to get the Libram on. Whoa! Holy moly!
That's
actually massive. Wait, what?
so much AoE and so much broomsticky stuff has gone as well. So this is most of this is gonna stick. In fact, it's all gonna stick.
All right.
A lot of fish.
Yeah, Samuro gone.
Really?
We need like a Libra of Hope or something. Lady Liadrin,
Okay.
That's some Librams, but there would only be one attackable target, and it's not enough Librams to like threaten to kill or anything.
How much defense can he muster here? Not a lot. It doesn't die though, I don't think, so staying alive is quite obviously staying alive is important, but staying alive is super important if you've got a Liadrin and a chance to actually take these down the next turn.
Yeah. Could kill it off into the 4-2 and then
I do love a good
like Aldor attended double devout people or something along those lines. But I think just keeping the 8-4 up and pushing face and threatening damage is good enough. Ooh, Hand of Adal is a sick draw as well. Now Tansoku can trade over the Murloc with the Libram on the Divine Shield, and then go Blade Master Samuro, Hand of Adal, Libram, bring it up to 4 attack, trade it in, clear the board, and that would
Does it
push
live?
13 damage to face.
I don't think it
Yeah,
lives.
it would. You're trading
you
over
kill-
a
you
5
kill-
attack minion.
No, you're right. You kill the other thing. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So 4/2 Murloc goes over the Divine Shield on the Devout Pupil.
Got you.
Then you Blade Master Samuro, Libram, brings it up to 2 attack. Hand of Adal brings it up to 4 attack. Trade it in. It clears the entire board. And then you get to push 13 damage to face. Maybe he's trying to see if there's a lethal?
Yeah, I think that's what usually happens with these top players. They see what you saw pretty quickly, and then they're like, okay, I've got time. I'm 3 off lethal. Is there something else?
Yeah, well, can Libram of Hope behind this as well to just develop another 8/8?
Yeah, as long as there's no other board clears left, there probably are not. Yeah. That looked unlikely at one point in this game, but he's got it done.
Yeah, I mean, the Magruo Prime was necessary for Tansoku to even have a chance in this game. Maybe his own variant off the top could have also bailed him out. But this is the one thing that allowed him to stick a massive board and really threaten. And still, totally spell drawn and no Libram of Hope. So, no way to really defend himself. Obviously, Devout Pupil provides some level of defense, but not nearly enough with that board. And Tansoku, elated.
He is enjoying these wins. One more win to go to hit 6-1, and he's going to have a chance with this Hunter. 3 goes at it.
Yeah.
Against the regular handlock, the large Paladin, which will be interesting to see if it can actually get stuff down quickly enough against Hunter. Probably can. And whichever one wasn't banned, so the Shaman or the Demon Hunter.
And it's got some imprisoned Felmals in there. So we're looking good. We are looking good. Favorite card. Probably of all time. Yeah.
I've always liked Felmar. It's been one of my favourites. You may have heard me mention it.
Yeah, I know. You talk about that all the time.
5 damage for 2 mana. What's not to like?
Yeah. And your opponent can't interact with it.
They can't. No, they can't do anything about it. Just straight to the face, 5 damage. 50-50. Either it hits face or it doesn't.
Yeah. It's free real estate.
It's not even on the key cards. Like, everyone knows it's so good that they're talking about other things like Moonfangs, War Songs, and
Adorable Infestation.
Was this you?
No. I haven't done key cards today. I pick the same cards every time for every deck.
That's not true.
Unless there's
When you
something
used to
weird.
do
Like for this
Shadow
one, I would have done
Priest-
Quick Shot, Aim Shot, Moonfang. That's what I would have done. I have
When
a
you
pattern.
used to do Shadow Priest, you alternated Desk Imp and the Murloc, the Tiny Fin.
Yeah, well, I just click random zero cost cards. That's what I do for Shadow Priest, or that's what I did for Shadow Priest.
Because you actually
When it
tested
existed in a
noticing.
meaningful capacity. Yeah. They're all the same, really. Outside of the anomaly that one is a higher win rate than the other. Very interesting.
That was great. That's one of my favourite anomalies.
It's a conspiracy. All right, let's get into it. Libram Paladin's going to be first choice here into the foray for UchihaSaske. Bannerman and City Tax? Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yep. City Tax. Not good very often, but looks like it's going to be pretty good here. You have to get it early, otherwise it does nothing against almost every deck.
That's a 2/2.
Yep, that survives.
Now it's going to be a 3/2 with Divine Shield.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
There it is. All right. So UchihaSaske's got some nope, just kidding. City Tax. I was just got some
The thing is, later on, City Tax just doesn't do much, right? If you don't use it on turns 1 and 2, it just gets lost in the void to some degree. It doesn't really aid trades because you've got 4 6s or nothing, so they're either huge or they're not, so you just get rid of it early.
Yep. And Tansoku just kind of go through the motions, but UchihaSaske just has the checks at every point. Blade Master Samuro not going to come down to answer this board. Tansoku does have Wrangler into Rhino. Or
Hungry, aren't ya?
secret option number 2.
Uh-huh.
Dang.
Or
Ah?
secret option number 3. Double Wolpertinger next turn. And float 3 mana. How about that? Alright, Moonfang.
Actually, no, that's a lot of stats with Blade Master Shamro gone. I think Trampling Rhino just makes the most sense.
I mean, it does, but you've got to look at the others, especially when they both actually have upsides, right? It's not just we trample with a Rhino, but at the end of the day, we just trample with a Rhino. It fits the curve beautifully, turns 5 and 6. So, yeah.
Yep. Oh, there it is. That's going to be the difference maker.
It's a little bit late, but maybe, just maybe, he's facing a wall of taunts on turn 7. Can you picture it? Wall of taunts everywhere. He's on 4 health, and the Felmore just goes straight under the taunts.
7 minions
funny.
on board. All of them. 10 plus stats. They're all 14/14s. Felmore is emerging.
They're all mutinous.
Yeah.
What if Mutinous eats the Felmore? You've got to play it just in case, right? All these reasons. All these reasons to play a Felmore.
Still got a couple turns before Mutinous could eat the Felmore, though. We're okay. We're okay. Oh, Libra of Hope is such a good draw. Can buy some time, and then Libra of Hope on 7. Is it going to be enough time, though? That's the question, because another 10 damage is going to face here. And there's a lot of damage preserved on board, and UchihaSaske has absolutely no way to defend himself until that point. Well, I guess Devout Pupil, but Devout Pupil would just leave him dead on board with the way things are going. So, needs a big pickup here. What's the draw off the top? Oh no, it's a mutinous!
Oh no! There's
Oh,
no
the
way through.
humanity! I think he's dead.
I think so too. Let's just add this up. 6 health. That gets eaten. And pinged. Yeah, that's dead. That's dead. Keep hovering them. Yeah, he gives it up.
Yep.
Tansoku
Dead,
celebrates.
and dead. Tansoku takes the win.
3 different pop-offs there. 4, 5, 6, 7.
Each
How many
individual
pop-offs?
facial expression and hand motion is a pop-off for Tansoku. I'm delighted to see him win. Such a genuine, caring Hearthstone player.
And he carries you with him wherever he goes.
Yeah, I used to have my list of players that I would always put on prediction boards back when I used to have my trusty chalkboard.
Right.
I miss it so dearly. And my order of operations was Killing All Day is always first, Tansoku is always second. If they're available, I pick them. And so, kind of cool, because even though we don't have a prediction board yet, we do when we get to top 16. He's on my prediction board in spirit.
So my time on the chalkboard, I told Kallax I was going to pick him, and then I picked Tic Tac on a whim on the day. And
How'd that
Kallax
work out for you?
is still here today.
There you go. The curse of Lorinda. The curse of Lorinda. But yeah, that was a really quick one to kick off round 7. And I think that both Asia Pacific and Americas really needs some more players in the top 16 that we saw at the previous Master. Was there 2 Americas players and no Asia Pacific? Quite brutal. Quite brutal. But we're all in this together. So let's
hopeful.
let's hope that Tansoku can make it. Currently at 0 points, so would need a couple of good finishes in order to be in the consideration for Grandmasters going into next year. But
aren't there like 19 APAC slots next season anyway? Like,
there's a lot.
Just infinite APAC
6
slots.
I think there's 6. So the threshold is going to be quite low, I imagine. But maybe a bunch of APAC players have success in the Masters Tour, and then that number rises. But Neil, we are done with our initial match for round number 7. We still got plenty more coverage since that was a fast one for round number 7. So don't go anywhere. Plenty more action here for Masters Tour Stormwind right after this.
We're looking for brains. Not those kind of brains. Gaming brains. Impressive. Wait, are we going into your brain?
We have a new champion.
Uh-oh. I want the brains. No. Yes! Oh, okay. Maybe too powerful? And the most brilliant brains on the planet. Ooh, not such a brilliant move.
This stupid carry.
Creative brains.
The word is spell. She cast a fire spell on Illidan.
And amazingly talented brains. Spell it for us, Zaila.
Spell. S-T-E-L-L. Spell.
I got the spell on me again.
Brains that make dreams come true. Is that what goes on in your brain? Hey, leave that alone. Introducing Hearthstone Mercenaries. There's a game for all brands.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Masters Tour Stormwind. We are ready to take you through some more matches that are ongoing in this round. I'm Raven and joining me is Gia for this one, and we have a pretty cool matchup coming up, as is often the case when I get to cast Wyra. I enjoy it very much, but we do have Wyra versus, I'm going to try this, Gregoriusil, I think, but I'm going to probably end up going for Greg just to not lengthen the time of my sentences. But yeah, we have a pretty exciting match coming up because, like I said, I don't know much about Gregorius, but Wyra is a player I really enjoy watching and just watching his deck creations more than anything.
I love how you said you were going to shorten it to Greg and then immediately went Gregorius right after.
Let's keep people
it's
guessing.
Fine. Sure, fair enough. And we do have, I think, on both sides at least one slightly off-meta deck. On Gregorius' side, there is the Libram Paladin, which did just put on an exhibition a while ago, and I think could be an asset in this upcoming matchup because there's actually a Quest Warrior on the other side from Vyrer. At first, I thought this was just straight-up Control Warrior, but nope, it's got Raid the Docks in there. It's got the Frenzy package, which we've seen a lot of, I think, European players in particular bringing this certain certain list, I'd love to see it perform. I hope it doesn't get banned.
Yeah, I think not that I've personally played tons of this style of list before, but just from even just glancing at it and just looking at what its goals are probably going to be, is it still just forms, even though it's a quest warrior that sometimes feels like an aggro deck. I think this list specifically is a much more anti-aggro deck that can maybe act aggressive sometimes, right? Because yes, there's the quest and the pirates, but a lot of the pirates act like more of a defensive minions, as well as just having that frenzy package, which helps out a lot in obviously clearing up boards and such, and just trading away on boards. So I'm excited to see if we do get to see it in this series, because the one time I could have potentially cast it yesterday, it was banned. So we'll have to see what happens in that one. So fingers crossed. But overall, how is the Masters Tour going for you, Gia? Are you enjoying any standout moments or decks or players?
Oh, it's going well on one hand, where there's been a lot of great matches that I've enjoyed watching, but I admit I'm not at my best. I think I've missed called a lethal about 2 or 3 times already today. Apologies to all those players, but it kind of goes to show there's also just a lot more complexity to these matchups than I initially thought. Even though a lot of the matchups were ones that we've been seeing for quite some time, there's just newer and newer iterations. And just a while ago, we were talking about, is there an interaction with Trampling Rhino and Moonfang that we don't know about? Right. Does it actually deal the extra damage? There's still these questions coming up, because cards like Moonfang are sort of newer additions to what should already be a solved meta. And that's what I like to see in Masters Tours, just people bringing an extra twist. Because while the 4 good deck strategy does work for the most part, if you feel like you don't necessarily get an edge playing mirrors all the time, sometimes taking a risk can also pay off big time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that because we're so deep in the meta right now, and I guess towards the end of it, yes, we know the general go-to builds, and then those questions do have to be asked, because these players are playing through multiple rounds during this Masters Tour. That's multiple different opponents, and if you go into it saying, I'm just going to expect to play tons of mirror matches and win, that's a big ask of even the best players we have, right? Whereas if you can say, oh, well, what if I just change a couple of cards here, a couple of cards there, and maybe that gives me some kind of like unforeseen edge over my opponents, who maybe do stick to just those 30 cards that have been like generally agreed upon by the community so far. But looking at the other sets of lists for Gregorius, which I think I might stick with now, I think I like that, is the aggro druid that we've seen a good chunk of as well, but with a couple of additional cards like a Dreaming Drake in this list, which is not something you see too often. But then there is the Quest Mage, the Paladin you talked about with the Libram Paladin, and then that Garrote Rogue, but even that has the talented Arcanist in the list as well, so something just a little bit different. And whenever these decks such as the Rogue get so refined, just messing with the potential numbers you are capable of can not only help you just get extra lethals, but also just throw off your opponent. Maybe they're used to being safe at certain numbers or certain outcomes, and then suddenly Arcanist comes out of nowhere and changes everything up.
True, and sorry to pull it back, but I do want to highlight that Dreaming Drake in the Druid, because if the viewers are like me, they were not really sure what that card was. It is a 3-mana 3/4 Druid taunt with Corrupt, gain +2/+2, so I can already see that having quite good synergy with the card that makes all of your taunts cost less, or the first one for the turn, the Razormane Battle Guard. If you can make the Dreaming Drake itself cost less, that means it's easier to corrupt, so it might turn into even a 5/6, which can catch a lot of people off guard, because sort of those mid-rangey minions for Druid you don't expect until a little bit later on when they have access to Teacher's Pet. Looking at the lineup as a whole for Gregorius, though, I think he might be in a little bit of trouble, because the lineup to me looks like it's positioned to beat up on Handlock. I think that Druid has at least a slight favorable, close to a 50-50 to be fair, versus Handlock, but I do like Libram Paladin's chances, definitely Mage, and the Rogue as well. But Vira does not have Handlock, so I wonder what Gregorius is going to try and hope to beat up on. Potentially the Mage is a problem deck, in my opinion. Might not get through the Rogue and OTK Demon Hunter.
It's really tough, isn't it? I imagine as Wyra is one of the players that if you were trying to bring a counter something in the popular meta sort of approach, Wyra's one of the players you probably wish you could just dodge at all costs, because I don't think I've ever seen Wyra submit a set of lists that are all just standard, 4 good decks, the 30 cards everyone knows kind of lists, and we see that again, right, with this Warrior especially. So going to be interesting when we get to the match. We are just sorting out a few tech issues just to get this one ready for you, but I am just going to look at the standings overall just to see where everyone is lying. And are there any big names that are really sticking out for you? We can see that Matty is 6-0 so far, unless this is not refreshed, I'm not sure. There we go. We do have Yuansu as well down at 7-0, which is a really big deal. We saw him on stream a little bit earlier, so some of these players are already looking pretty good to make it to that top 16 at a minimum for tomorrow.
Yeah, it does certainly feel like having 7 wins is already into top 16, and then a couple people, lucky ones with good tiebreakers at 6-2 can also sneak their way in. But the fact that we're cutting to top 16 and not top 8 means that you have a little bit more work to do on day 3. Which generally, we used to do it that one round was played at the end of today or the second day, and then we would just go for the finals matches over on the next day, but that's not the case. So just because you've made top 16 doesn't mean anywhere close that your work is done. Right. We do have our bans for both players submitted now though, and actually Vire has banned away the mage from Greg, so I was mistaken. I thought that might be a problem deck to get through, but maybe Wire was factoring in a ban on his Demon Hunter, and at that point maybe the mage has a couple better matchups. I can see it getting there versus the aggro shaman, for example. Mage has good board control tools to deal with their first couple threats.
And also potentially the warrior as well, right? I know that Wyra is running the Bulwark of Azimuth, and there is some armor gain in that list, but also a lot of the deck is very minion heavy with that quest, so there's potential that he just doesn't really like the matchup with giving the mage tons of targets to just aim whatever at and really progress their own quest. So we'll see if that pays off for Wyra. We are going to dive into game number 1 very shortly though. We can take a look at Wyra's aggro shaman with the of course all of the elementals, and running that Bolner Hammerbeak, which at least for this Masters Tour and just recently has become a pretty standard inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people just call that the Octobot for Shaman. I think we're stretching it, the amount of cards we compare to an Octobot, but I mean, it's not sharing any similarities in terms of mana discounts, but it is very similar in stat line. 2 mana, 1/4, very difficult to remove when played on curve, and if you leave it, there is going to be a benefit. The Shaman will very likely get some additional battle cries by leaving the Bolner alive, but Gregorius is going to queue up the Garrote Rogue first. So we could see Bolner face off versus Octobot and see which one reigns supreme in that situation. The matchup is quite close, a lot closer than I originally thought. I thought Doomhammer would just smack Rogue left and right, and because Rogue doesn't generally have healing, they can't kind of outpace that, but they can get a very early grip on the board.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Just with the Bolner overall is, I think a lot of people will generally look at it and think of all the crazy combos you can do. But honestly, if you just get one additional value battlecry from this, it's probably just worthwhile, right? It's not a minion you have to put too much mana into. It's one you could easily fit into some of the late game turns as well. So I'm excited to see how it does in this game as we do dive into the game number 1 here. Both of these players on a 5-1 score. So again, a win here would be huge, honestly, just to propel them up to a little bit more of a comfortable ending to the Swiss portion of the tournament. But Gregorius here does have a very strong opener. The Octobot and the Shroud, of course, no Plunderer, sorry, he does have a Plunderer. I meant no field contact. He does have a Plunderer, though, to help out with some of the early aggro. So if you were going to not have field contact, I think Plunderer will be next on my list.
Yeah, that is one of the best cards to deal with early high health minions, which Shaman does have access to if they're able to hit the Forgeborn or even a Kindling Elemental like this one to turbo out the curve for Wire. We saw him just keep 1-2 and essentially 3. The Earth Revenant becomes 3 with this battle cry from the Kindling Elemental. And even though the Bolner will not get immediate value because the turn 3, Wire can only play 1 battle cry, it will be protected by the Earth Revenant with Taunt. So that's a decent game plan to go for, but all of that can be foiled now by the Octobot, which allows for a big Plunderer in response from Gregorius.
Yeah, and I still like why we're going for this, right? Like, hero power wouldn't have really achieved too much. This Octo's getting procced unless the hero power is exactly Taunt Totem, so I like this overall and just set up into that Earth Revenant.
Oh, I'm a bit surprised he's not choosing to Okay.
Oh, yeah,
For the longest time, he was pointing at face there, but almost always in this situation, you I think it is safer to bite the bullet, and at the cost of 1 HP to Gregorius's face, he gets to discount 1 less card from the Octobot. And that's often way more relevant in these early board battles. But this Brain Freeze is so easy for Gregorius to get rid of the Bolner with, alongside the Shroud of Concealment. And he's chugging along the draw game plan while making sure the board isn't getting out of control. Wire, though, does have access to Earth Revenant, which can clear the Octobot alongside the trade. But because it'll eat up the discount from the Kindling Elemental, his turn 4... I guess he could still go Canal Slogger, but the overload on that makes the Lurker for turn 5 a bit difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's pondering, right? Because although he would still be overloaded and still have a problem next turn instead of turn 5 anyway, so I think it's delayed no matter what he does. I do wonder if he wants to maybe save the Revenant, because if he uses the Slogger, he can actually just push 1 to face and keep an additional minion on board. Like, I don't really hate this.
Yeah. I think this fits the curve a lot better, right? Because he can go Storm Strike next turn.
Right.
And then I guess you still need an Elemental before the Lily Pad turn, but the Revenant can come down a little bit later and get a lot more value than that, because Gregorius's deck is full of 1 health minions, all these Aug Merchants and the Prize Plunderer. For Gregorius, though, I think this is a Secret Passage turn, even though he could set up a Prize Plunderer. It's not the cleanest.
Shadow Step, anyone? No? Okay. That would have been pretty nice, especially with what the rest of his hand is.
And just going to throw out the Ethereal Aug Merchant to get rid of the 1/1, dump that card because it's not coming back from the passage. It is a decent hand for Gregorius in terms of answering power, but if he doesn't pick up any more card draw soon, I could see this gassing out versus an Earth Revenant.
Well, there was a lot of cards that Wyra could have drawn that would have been playable there and would have been an elemental, but I do think that there's a chance the Lilypad Lurker just might come down on its own anyway, because it's not like you're overly reliant on the Hex portion of that minion against specifically Rogue, unless it lines up against, you know, exactly a field contact or maybe a Golem, for example. But I think overall, with this Granite Forge, things might change yet again for Wyra. So this plan is not as smooth as he would like it to be, but it is a plan.
It is, and it does feel bad to use Storm Strike before a Doomhammer, but his hand is simply not hitting the weapon portion of it. He's hit the minion curve, so it's all about protecting the minions and getting rid of the 2/1 with his own face. Somewhat protects his Canal Slogger, but Gregorius now has hit the field contact, and I do think he should remove the Canal Slogger this turn, which will come at the cost of 2 more cards played, because there's only 2 been played so far, right? So he could go Garrot and then Prize Plunderer. Yeah. And he still maintains 3 Battle Cries for the field contact turn. It's a good middle ground.
Yeah, it should be enough, especially because the total cost of that turn right now is 2 mana, which is a nice bonus, right? Still leaves him 3 mana to keep going with the chain if needed. Here's Earth Revenant potentially getting a very, very strong job done here. Cleaning up 2 of the minions, peeling the Divine Shield off the Octo. It doesn't look like the craziest turn in the world, but there's also just a 2/6 taunt sitting on the board, so pretty nice overall for Wyra, but he might be a little bit upset how strong this turn's going to be for Gregorius.
Yeah, and he's also just picked up Insurance in the Ice Barrier, just in case Wyra top decks Doomhammer and has like Rockbiter in hand. That's like the one thing that can go wrong for Gregorius now, but with the Barrier, even that, he has a play around. It's very simple now, just getting to the bottom of his deck because he has the other field contact. He has access to Prize Plunder, can step that and replay it if he wants to just get rid of the 2/6. And then Wyra will even have to be bothered about dealing with this board because he's already used an Earth Revenant.
Yeah, the only question I really have right now is how tricky is this going to be for Gregorius, since he has already casted a Garou? How much of a fear is it for him if these like few bleeds that are in the deck sort of just trickle out with no spell damage, for example? Is that potentially game losing?
I don't think so. There is access still to Talented Arcanist with the other Garrote at worst case scenario, which can be like 12 damage plus 14 damage at will. And if you are just going to trickle out the other bleeds, that's 6 damage. Not even accounting for this Ethereal Og Merchant, right? So Gregorius, the ask here is for him to get 8 damage to face, worst case scenario at some point, which I think is super doable, especially since Wire's already used the Canal Slogger, so his healing is few and far between.
Yeah, so probably just good enough to get there regardless. It's just something you don't see too often apart from desperate situations, right? In those early Garrote plays. We're very used to seeing them used in the game-finishing turn. But here though, Gregorius is just all over this, isn't he? Board control, still cooking along, obviously still has enough card draw, picking up the Shroud with the prep as well to keep that card draw going, and suddenly he's hitting that like magic number of 5 or less cards in the deck just to say, yeah, next turn you're probably dead.
And the Penflinger is kind of clutch as well as a card that can keep removing his own minions because he kind of needed the board space to keep the card draw rolling here. He can now play Neophyte. Wow, he can step his field contact at the end of this if need be. It might even just be a bigger threat on board as it is, because with one Earth Revenant played, even if Wire draws the other one, that's not enough to kill a field contact. And if Wire's turn is Doomhammer swing into contact, Gregorius is kind of happy. But surely stepping contact is also just a good way to win the game.
Yeah, it's one of those things is, that's all correct, but why not just do this, right? Like, this is just fine. The shield, the shield, what was I even saying? The Shadow Step is just worthwhile here. Because you could just look at this hand, right? 5 cards, 4 cards on the draw next turn left in the deck. That just feels pretty guaranteed as far as I can see it, at least.
Wire with access to playing the 3 cards on the left conveniently thanks to the Forgeborn discounts, but feels too little too late. I mean, he can get rid of the Neophyte and a 2-1, but it's not even killing off the Octobot. I mean, he could kill the spell damage, but that leaves more minion damage on board. And with 5 cards left in deck and a 1-cost field contact in hand, he has to know that the end is very near.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure what elemental he could have got, maybe a Canal Slogger there, but Steward of Scrolls definitely too slow for this. The Arid Storm is going to hit the board, and these are decisions, right? Does he want to get rid of spell damage, or does he want to get rid of the more immediate power on board?
I would say immediate power, because you kind of remove 5 on board versus 1. And then the spell damage is probably not going to deal more than spell damage by sticking 4 damage by sticking around. But Wire did have a think about that right at the end.
Let's see now. Field contact for 1. There's prep in hand. There's a 1-mana Talented Arcanist as well. All of these things look like they add up to the end of the game for Wire here, as I think Gregorius is going to be able to make this work.
I think so.
Wait, Kazakhstan?
Maybe just a mistake. That's not going to happen here.
I was like, is he playing this extremely safe and saying, no, I'll do it next turn, which is fine if you know you're not dead, but I think this is just clearly too powerful. And you're going to see the Arcanist, the sort of Arcanist, I'll say combo, for lack of a better phrase here.
Altogether unnecessary as it happens, but I'm glad we get to see it. The aura on that going to make each bleed deal 4 damage, but then plus the 1 spell damage that was already on board deals 5 each, and that is well over lethal versus Wire. Game 1 to Gregorius.
And a very smooth game as well. Of course, Wire didn't have the most explosive opening. I think him having to play Bolner on 2 and not an Elemental to then try and get that sort of relentless chain going of like 1 to 5 mana of Elemental after Elemental. Gregorius just got control of the game and didn't really lose it, and Wire could never really fight back. And it's one of those few issues that Elemental Shaman does suffer from, is outside of the 1 damage AoE that we saw from the Earth Revenant. If you're so far behind on board so early, you're just playing like a 2-2, a 3-2, a 4-4 into like 4 different minions. It often doesn't feel enough without already gaining a huge lead and then instantly backing it up with the threat of Doomhammer.
It is a relatively straightforward deck, not that much flexibility, but it is worth noting that Wire did keep the Bolner. He kept the 1-2-3 sort of curve with that. So he was accepting the possibility that you don't get immediate elemental chain value But the thing is that all falls apart if there's an Octobot, because you do need the best of your deck rather than the average. And unfortunately for Wire, in that instance, there was an Octobot, but he is going to move on to the Garrote Rogue of his own, which happens to feature a Rustrot Viper, not something we often see. We've seen rogues, of course, most of them these days running at least one guild trader, and then some people running SI7 Extortion as well as the tradable option. But Wire here choosing to put in the Viper, maybe because he expected more shamans in the field to get rid of Doomhammer.
That's true, yeah, and you do have some of the sort of splash effects as well. If you're expecting Paladin, we've seen a lot of secret aggro Paladin in there. Sometimes that can get some jobs done, even potentially versus Demon Hunter, if you can proc the weapon early and then make them draw that card when they didn't really plan to. There are some small bonuses, but I do agree. I think the fear of the Doomhammer is a big one, but it looks like he is going to be on the Rogue, and I'm not 100% sure what the next matchup is going to be on the other side, but Gregorius does have that aggro druid and this Libram Paladin as well. So again, what have you been thinking about Libram Paladin so far? Because I swear every time I see it win, it barely wins, and then every time I see it lose, it looks like it's 30 random cards someone who has never played Hearthstone has put in a deck.
I mean, just on paper, the stats for ladder seem to support that this deck is good against a lot of the popular choices in the meta, but I don't really believe in its power level because it is relatively straightforward. I feel that flexibility and mana cheat is a very, very powerful thing to do in this meta. If we look at all the top decks that are playing things that discount their hand, like the Demon Hunter Quest or Octobot or Incanter's Flow, I guess that's for the deck, but eventually those cards go in your hand. You can discount Librams, but Librams only, and you're not guaranteed to draw Librams throughout the part of the game. Like, there's so many disparate parts to Libram Paladin that it feels like a lot of different draws just don't synergize well enough together, but it is a jack of all trades deck, because if you do hit the curve, you can be aggressive. If you hit the City Tax plus the Brim of Justice, you can clear boards, so it has win percentage, a decent amount versus every deck. Garrote Rogue, though, I feel like on average gets there sooner versus Libram Paladin.
Yeah, I think the combination, because Libram Paladin, to maybe oversimplify the deck, so, if that's the criticism for me, fair enough, but it is just generally play a chunky minion, hope it sticks, so then you can have two minions the turn after and start either pushing face or fighting for board. And because of that, I think the tools that Rogue has are just very efficient at either delaying that strategy or just cleaning up the minions, right? We can see already Prize Plunderer in the hand for Wyra. There's going to be Brain Freeze at some point as well, which stalls so much of the Paladin's damage. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Rogue generally just gets their plan done a lot quicker, because also, additionally, the Libram of Hopes don't feel as impactful in this matchup as they do in a lot of the other ones.
Yeah, they do. Sorry, they don't, because Wire
yes, they do. Wait,
does have access to 30 damage upwards of a total combo towards the end of the game, and because he's running the Arcanist, he's fine throwing out an Ethereal Og Merchant as an early play. When you're on the play as Rogue, it's quite important, I would say, to make sure you can develop a minion that can challenge a Aldor Attendant, for example, because any minion that sticks, like you mentioned, can snowball out of control. There's so many buff effects. Wire with the Keep of Secret Passage was also pretty interesting. I'm seeing that more and more from players that are on the play specifically, just as a one-card guaranteed delete 2 to 3 cards from your deck somewhere towards the mid-game. Gregorius, though, one thing we also have to note is he's running Battleground Battlemaster in his Paladin. Oh, right on time.
Perfect, yep.
That's not something you often see in Libram Paladin, but that's going to be playing on Wire's mind, right? A lot of the utility of playing versus Libram Paladin is that you know that their burst is very limited, but with the Battlegrounds Battlemaster, that might make Wire play a bit safer later on.
And I do like this inclusion. I know earlier on, off camera, I was talking a lot about, I was looking at so many different builds of Paladin in this Masters Tour, and I was like, they all look just a little bit rubbish. They all look, they've got a couple of cards here and there that don't feel like they should fit. But one thing I do like is the combination of Battleground Battlemaster and 2 Noble Mounts instead of the one we're used to seeing. So it just gives the board that little bit of extra durability, so that it's more likely Battlemaster can actually land and hit 2 targets, because we often see against Paladin players like let Paladin have one minion alive, which means the damage is much more predictable.
Fire with what looks like a relatively early contact, but kind of informed by the fact that he had Shadow Step, he was okay with just going Prep Swindle and essentially only getting one guaranteed extra draw off of the contact, and very likely another one, because if you get a one-cost minion, such as the Prize Plunderer, then that fills out the mana very nicely, and it happened to also remove the Cariel. Very effective turn from Fire, and the response from Gregorius is relatively slow, just the hero power Noble Mount. Noble Mount is yet another buff card in the deck, but doesn't get cheapened by all these Librams, so it feels a little bit clunky here. But from this point onward, Greg is gonna turn up the heat. He has the Aldor Truthseekers back-to-back.
Yeah, and just something that's important to note here, Wyra doesn't have to fully respect this minion on board, because there is no Blessing of Authority in this list for Gregorius, which is often the fear you see when there's a Divine Shield minion with a Death Rattle into another minion going into turn 5. Blessing of Authority is the #1 threat, but it's not going to be in Gregorius's deck, so Wyra doesn't have to fully respect this. I think the main reason for removing this is it looks like he's chosen to just to play the field contact this turn.
Going for Passage with 1 mana remaining, this Penflinger will return to the original hand no matter what. Gets Guardian Og Merchant, which is a pretty good outcome. I'm not sure if he shoots the minion or protects his field contact, but it's essentially the same thing, because if you leave a 1/1, that's going to pop the Divine Shield. And actually, it's not the easiest matter for Gregorius to remove a field contact. Not impossible, because there is Blade Master Samuro, but he's used Cariel, right? So it has to be either Samuro or Libram of Justice, and Libram of Justice is a very inconvenient and slow way of dealing with contact. It's delaying his Aldor Truthseeker, so that's job well done for Wire's contact. And he has the second one in hand now as well, so right now it's just a matter of accumulating more battle cries in hand, which I think means trading both of the tradables away and then discounting the hand with Octobot. Oh!
Really good timing from Wyra last turn, because look, 2 Aldor Truthseekers in Gregorius' hand that weren't played on curve. That is the nightmare of every Libram Paladin players there, because you just need to play that on curve, get those reductions down early. But there's Samuro, okay, so Gregorius has some response now after using that Libram of Justice a little bit earlier on. He does have a Samuro and almost a guaranteed clear, I think is fair to say, against Rogue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's why we're too far ahead.
Yeah,
I'm left in the deck, like
quiet.
And he has another Shadow Step in case this field contact doesn't get there. I don't think it's quite possible this turn, but very close is Wire here. And the last turn after he picked up the Shroud of Concealment, he deviated from trading and just used the mana very efficiently to get the Shroud in hand. Now we can see a One Thief potentially. If Ethereal's being used this early, is he just going for the Garots now? Nope, it's going on an opposing minion. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's just used it to clean up, right? He has the damage available to him, so... And he also knows that Libram of Hope cannot come down next turn, because there's only... Oh, wait, sorry, it can, right? It'll be turn 7, he played 1 Aldor. So, sorry, he could go up against a Libram of Hope, but I think he's fine, right?
There's a Neophyte aura, though.
Oh wait, yeah, he's just played Neophyte. Yeah, of course. So yeah, he does definitely block Libram. Apologies, I was looking at I was thinking the 2 Truthseekers were still in their hand, but they have not. Neophyte
no
blocks
worries.
that. There's already a 0 mana Garrote in, 1 mana Garrote in hand as well.
Working out very nicely for Warrior here. The Samuro is a must play, but now that the field contact returns to the hand, all he has to do is go contact, play Guild Trader, and then play Garrote and a Battle Cry.
Yeah, you don't win these. That was just too much of Rogue doing what Rogue does, and look how far ahead Wyra was in that game. It was kind of ridiculous, right? Like, Gregorius never even really put down any kind of threat for Wyra. Wyra's still on 27 health at this point, and he got through his whole deck. Really well played there, really well executed. And it looks like that's going to make Wyra wrap, or at least even up this series 1-1 now.
Yeah, just clinical gameplay from Wire there. And also showing his willingness to get rid of the Ethereal Aug Merchants because of that Guild Trader. That's the big reason why people are playing this rather than Kazakus. There's not even a need for Talented Arcanist if you can manage to hold on to the Guild Trader towards the end. Of course, it is quite expensive, but the cool thing about tradable cards is that if at any point you discount them in hand with the Octobot and trade them back, they retain that discount in the deck after you've drawn them. And Wire didn't actually even need all that spell damage, to be honest. Like, I think Gregorius was down to 18, and Wire knew that, right? Even if he didn't, for example, have that much access to spell damage, his willingness to play Ethereal Aug Merchant on turn 1 kind of showed that he knew this matchup isn't combo end-all be-all. There's ways you can abuse the fact that Paladin doesn't have that great of a way to responding to boards here and there, and it was just very cleanly done. Garrote Rogue out of the way for both players.
Yeah, nice response there from Wyra, but I think you hit the nail on the head there. Garrote Rogue out of the way for both players, I think, is a fairly expected outcome in any competitive match of Hearthstone. I think everyone's very confident that that deck being one of the best. But now we move on to the spicier stuff as we see Quest Warrior here from Wyra, of course. Raid the Docks as the main thing to draw your eye to here. And there is that, the Frenzy synergy with a fair few minions, mainly the Stonewall, Anchorman, and Southang, of course, but there are removal tools and Control Warrior-esque cards in here with Bulwark of Azimuth, Coerce in there, a Barov, of course, and even the Cargo Guards are like semi-control, right? Because although it's a pirate and it's an early minion, it is gaining you armor for every turn it lives. So it's a very interesting list, and I'm kind of excited to see how this game goes.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that list of tools you mentioned, there's also the Whirling Combatant, which is a 2/6 that deals 1 damage to all minions, and it's not a Frenzy card itself, but can have a lot of synergy with Frenzy minions, and is just pretty decent. It feels like if you're actively putting things like Earth Revenant in your Shaman, it feels that you are looking to deal a lot of small AoE in the current meta, which I can see being very useful against the likes of Face Hunter, Garrote Rogue, and Aggro Druid. For now, though, this is not one of those matchups where you want the small AoE, so I like that Warrior is just holding on to the Pirate game plan. The main mindset here is try to get early Rikara online so you can get repetitive value from the ship and the weapon, because the Paladin does also kind of go toe-to-toe with your late game.
Yeah, it's a weird matchup on the surface, isn't it? Because both players will be fighting for board early game like an aggro mirror, but both players are also capable of playing a very late game as well with the way the decks are built. So yeah, let's see which way it goes here for now. Obviously, Gregorius getting a little bit ahead on board with that 1 drop. Naturally, it's going to happen more often against a quest deck because, as we saw, Wyra spending turn 1 just activating his quest, and now the Pirates are going to be coming thick and fast.
My mistake, sorry. Combatant is also Frenzy. It deals another 1 to everything after it gets damaged.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. It was just Earth Revenant in my head for some reason to your own minions as well. We'll get that spec issue fixed in just a bit, but for now, Gregorius with a pretty strong opener. Yes, I say that even as he's missing a good curve option on turn 3, but this already feels like it's above average for Libram Paladin, right? Just hitting Attendant and having access to Truthseeker on 5 is what you want. The card draw is lacking though, so he's going to be looking to pick up Knight of Anointment in the near future, maybe some Hands of Adal as well.
Yeah, this is like the access to, or the low card draw is of course the weak point of Paladin, but if you have enough things to do in the immediate future, you can just bank, okay, I will have drawn 3 to 4 cards by then, and hopefully something good sticks out. The worrying thing is just that turn 4. Gregorius needs some help, I think, to smooth this out, but if he only has to cover turn 5 and 6, even if he just plays a Battleground Battlemaster to maybe, you know, make some decent trades on the board that turn, I think it could look pretty good. Broom wasn't really it though, was it?
No.
Although weirdly, is it Broom hero power this turn?
It could be, but I feel like Broom gets a little bit more utility than that later on, mainly with your Lord Barov. Also with the Librams of Hope as well. Because this 2-1 by itself is not really threatening to grow the way leaving a 2-1 versus Paladin would, right? There's not that many buff effects versus the Warrior, so I don't mind Gregorius just taking this turn to hero power and probably play a Libram. He can Aldar next turn, and at some point, if that 2-1 is still around, it can get swept up by a Samuro.
Oh, Gregorius is definitely sat thinking about it, and probably going over all the things we're just discussing right now. Could have that empty board if he's willing to sacrifice the...
Wow.
In the box?
No minions played. So he's trying to play around the Stonewall Anchorman, I'd have to assume. Which, would rush if it were coined out for Wire and immediately draw him a card. But I didn't think it was so big of a threat to the point that you miss pushing the button, which I feel like is one of Paladin's advantages in terms of value generation traditionally versus Control Warriors. Paladins just kind of get there because they have infinite minions given infinite time. Not straight up Control Warrior, is it?
There. Now surely the turn's a lot more simple. You have Aldor Truthseeker in hand, you play Aldor Truthseeker. Gets to play the Libram and get a Libram down as well. And also it's important because even though the Libram might not make the biggest difference at this moment in time, just having it played right and stacking up the card I've just gone completely blank on. The Lady Liadrin, of course, stacking up that and getting some Librams in the tank is going to be pretty important if the game does go to that late game state, because if the Librams have either been denied or not drawn, suddenly the Warrior late game looks significantly stronger.
Or in the tank about whether he wants to trade this heavy plate. I think it's fine, even though he's going to face tank the 5 this turn to get rid of the Aldor Truthseeker, because again, Gregorius's burst is still limited to minions that he would have on board, even though he's running the Battlegrounds Battlemaster. It doesn't actually augment from hand damage if you don't already have threats. And Wire has this Mutinous as well that he can coin out, which has a lot of tasty targets next turn, it looks like.
And even look at that, right? Gain 8 armor. Look at the rest of the hand. There's Kresh, gains armor. There's Barov Rancor, can gain a lot of armor. And there's the Bulwark of Azeroth, of course. So I think defensively, Wire is covered. So I do really like that tradable there and just try and get into some of the more aggressive tools.
Just Devout Pupil would be my instinct here for Gregorius. Well, sorry, he can get it alongside the Knight of Anointment because the Libram of Wisdom costs 0.
Kind of interesting again because he could have actually Libram'd the 2/2, played the Devout Pupil and then broomed. To go
get
for
rid of the 2/5.
trade, yeah. I know I'm talking a lot about just playing this broom, and I understand it's a little bit, it's not tons of gain to use a broom in these situations I've mentioned, but I am it is a card I'm going to keep my eye on, because similar to Shadow Step, it's a card I always think if you lose the game and there was a broom in your hand for multiple turns, you have to just ask some questions, right?
True. Maybe if he were in a bit of a scarier position, but I think the broom has just so much utility with the 8/8. And as it stands, it's kind of preventing Mutinous sometimes from getting a good target.
That's true.
We'll see, though.
And the winner is...
Oh! That's the big one.
And I'll just triple check this here. But yeah, he's only playing the 1, isn't he, in this list? So there is no second one. So Wyra now can just remove that from his mind. He doesn't have to worry about Wind Fury at all now. That's just long gone.
If it ate the Samuro, was this lethal? Because you could play the Battlemaster and then rush the Battlemaster. I think it was.
Oh yeah, with the 1 mana. That's pretty sick, yeah.
But not the case. If the broom or of course, Battlemaster itself was eaten, then Gregorius was in a lot of trouble. And right now, he can remove everything by playing Samuro. I wasn't sure if this was insta Libram of Justice. I thought there might have been room to go for a Libram of Hope plus Broom play. But now that he's drawn second Justice, it still makes a lot of sense, right? Just Samuro this turn, push a lot of face damage. His entire game plan has been aggressive, and because he doesn't have access to that much draw, I think it's okay. But he is just going to hold on to the Samuro as well. It's a lot of removal he's trying to get more value from. Misses 3 face damage because of that, though.
Yeah, Gregorius feels like a follower of the Yala school of thought, which is get the most out of every single card possible. And because we've seen Yala do this for a long time, where if a card can get a decent job done, but can it do better, right? And if it can, it doesn't get played till it can. So, yeah, as always, very interested to see how this pans out here with the Broom and now Samuro being kept when there are other opportunities to play it. Wyra does get to clean up this Divine Shield, an additional minion though, which will be a big deal, but has to be forced onto that Bulwark just to not die this turn.
Yeah, definitely quite awkward. Not seeing a clean way to one-shot the combatant so it doesn't get its additional frenzy value, but that's okay, I think. If you just trade the 5-6 into it or just ignore it altogether. I don't think this weapon can go anywhere but face. It's too valuable to use your weapon to get rid of one Bulwark charge, I think. So what happens after that is a question, because if you want to send everything face, then you are leaving up the Frenzy on the 3-6, which will probably delete the Divine Shield on your Libram of Hope, which looks like it wants to get played this turn. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to wonder if it's ever worth considering, like, trade the 3-2 in to then replay the Libram on the Devout Pupil and then play the Libram of Hope, just to make two slightly beefier minions. But it looks like he's just trying to rush down this Bulwark, which again, I can get behind, right? Like, he could decide he's so far ahead, and because he's retained Samuro and Broomstick, and still got a Libram of Justice in hand, if any of this board sticks, he can like hit face with the weapon, swing with a big minion and maybe get the kill. And even if not, and Wyra starts to fight back with loads of minions on his side, well, there's just insta-kills, whichever way you want to look at it here, with the Libram of Justice and Samuro next turn.
Although the combatant is pretty clutch here, if it just trades into the Devout Pupil, it's going to deal another 1 AoE, and that would allow for Rancor to kill 2 minions. But the fact that the 8-8 is sticking around is probably too scary, so maybe this ends up being a Barov turn instead. That Rancor is the big reason why Gregorius didn't push his hero power button last turn altogether.
Try to keep yourselves alive.
Rancor healing for 10 armor here. Huge, especially since Gregorius is kind of low on threats right now, but the Knight of Anointment can let him draw the other Libram of Hope, potentially. The Adrin at any point will be huge. Varian as well. Hand of Vidal, decent. That keeps cycling.
Yeah, and honestly, getting depending if he wants to start with Hand of Vidal, which I guess he does, to draw a card, even getting this McGurgle down is a pretty big deal, right? Yeah, suddenly now there's McGurgle. If it dies, then you've got the Prime in, and we know that's just such a powerful one-card draw for this Paladin deck. And now there's Varian as well, which, you know, his whole purpose is to refill a bit of the hand. So Gregorius has just pulled together the resources when he needed them, since I think it's fair to say we have gone past the sort of aggro phase of the matchup now.
Definitely feels like it. We're still on what part of the quest now? Okay, the deal 2 is actually pretty relevant here. Could shave off Divine Shield. That is a bit inconvenient. I think he would have rather left the 4-1 intact because he was going to kill it with the Stonemaul Anchorman anyway. Trades back the Heavy Plate because his health is relatively safe for now. Gets the Cargo Guard down and is one pirate off from getting Rakara, but I'm not sure if she's really the priority here. It's just Warrior trying to outlast all these threats, and the Varian is going to make that very difficult. That being said, I'm not sure if there are any rush minions left in the deck. Is the Cariel still there?
He's not played Cariel, right? I don't recall him playing Cariel this game, so I want to say Cariel's there. We don't have live yet. There you go. Okay. 1 point for me.
Good job.
Yeah, I do like this. Just get all the resources. He knows Mutinous is gone. And also, this is kind of a weird play around the Vol'jin as well, right? That he might not be strictly playing around it, but it works out well that instead of there being just a Broom and Samuro in the hand, he actually now has some pretty threatening minions that even if this McGurgle or this Varian gets bounced, there's probably a decent minion going to be coming down in response.
Yeah. It's just a question now for Gregorius. I didn't realize why the players' names disappeared. Or how much he wants to commit into a potential brawl. Of course, Wire's only running 1 copy, so he doesn't have to be super disciplined into that. But I like that he's holding back. This is still enough threatage on the board right now. Allocates his Libram to the Recruit instead to play around, I guess, another Whirling Combatant, and he kind of wants McGurgle to die by this point because just drawing the Prime at any point will be very powerful here. Wire running out of removal tools. This brawl is precious.
It is. I'm even wondering if he can get away with not doing this, or whether he even looks at like Vol'jin the Libram to 1/1, and then maybe brawl depending on what gets thrown out.
Could be.
Delete the Libram replay from that.
I'm looking at Prime Coerce. Just leave the McGurgle. It is less mana efficient though, but it's always going to be this question, right? Is Gregorius going to commit more than this into a brawl? Maybe not, and maybe it is a better brawl this turn, especially with the Vol'jin, like you said, having the potential to pull out an even more relevant minion. He knows, however, that Varian didn't draw Liadrin, which is the main thing that Wire wants to cheat away.
There has been 3 cards on the left for a long time though, right? That Samuro, Broom, and second Libram have been in hand for quite a while now, and there are very few cards you'd really consider would not be played here. And it looks like Wyra's going to go for something closer to what you said than what I said. So you win this round, I suppose, with the Crash into Coerce there, just to get rid of the Varian and retain the Brawl. And we have seen both players actually just be very careful with resources.
Yeah.
I'd almost say greedy.
Kind of have to be when both players run this much top end. City Tax traded back for another City Tax.
High five.
Noble Mount, not amazing. Don't really see a way to get Cariel to one-shot the Crush, so sure, just use the Libram of Justice instead here. Very aggressively done, but I think it is well worth it just to make sure that Wire doesn't get another 8 armor.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, honestly. The Noble Mount on the McGurgle, like, isn't Gregorius happy if the McGurgle dies at this point in the game? Because it gives him another really strong top deck.
I thought so too.
He obviously loses a bit of damage right now, but I think I would have liked to seen that on the Truth Seeker.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Just because Wire also just has a weapon now that he might want to swing into a taunt minion. Captain Rakara available, but I don't know if this is good enough.
Oh, I don't know. This can do some strange things. The damage coming out from the ship is nice for proccing shields and just maybe picking off some small minions, but these weapons can vary greatly. I've been just gore-howled for lethal too many times at this point, which hurts. But they can also be rubbish, right? So this is one of the things you kind of play with at this point when you choose to play Quest Warrior, is you have to just go with the flow, because a new weapon gets replaced every single turn.
It is going to overwrite the Turtle Spike, though, which is a bit of a shame, but it's fine as long as Wire can get more damage going through. He isn't actually the aggressor, though. I think he's still in the middle of trying to turn the corner and stabilize, but the Pirate and Weapon could help with that. Just another Libram here for Greg seems very decent. Maybe he starts with the Bannerman.
Yeah, it's just, again, if he wants to play into Brawl, I think he has to make a decision whether he's going to try and never give Wyra a good Brawl, or whether he wants to just throw everything or enough out there to pull a Brawl away if it's in Wyra's hand. Because I guess the longer the game goes on, the worse the Brawl gets for Wyra in certain circumstances, because he's adding minions to the board every single turn, right?
Sort of, but then by that point, if you have more minions on board, maybe you don't even need the Brawl to deal with things.
Sure.
I like starting with the Bannerman just to see if Gregorius can pull his Liadrin with that, because if you do get Liadrin, I think it's insta Libram of Hope, because you do have like refill guaranteed the turn after. That being said, there's not all the discounts already for the Liadrin, so the Libram that's regenerated could not be played with Liadrin the same turn, but maybe we're getting a bit too deep in the tank there. Okay, Pirate, decent damage.
This is actually one of the weapons that doesn't look great, but actually can be, right? Because it's the it creates a minion based off the mana cost of the spell played. So although it's not going to be really activated this turn, I imagine, when you do get it and say, have some of those slightly more expensive spells, honestly, even a Coerce or a Rancor or something like that, it's nice to just gain an extra minion as well as the weapon swing.
Thanks for knowing what that weapon is, because I did not know.
Oh, okay.
It's the McGurgle back in order to not shuffle the Prime in the deck and also get rid of the Noble Mount buff that was still on it, I think. Pretty decent. The Samuro is problematic though, because it's going to soften up his taunt.
I also got rid of the
a
Libram.
reason to proc it right now.
Yeah, he isn't adding any more minions to the board, and a minion will only hit the board from Wire automatically on his next turn. So
right.
Yeah, I agree with this. Just push a bit more damage. But yeah, Wire did with the bounce on the McGurgle get rid of the one Libram of. What's the Libram called?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. There's so many now. I just pick a word. I pick a Paladin-y sounding word and just go for it normally. But yeah, so he did lose the one Libram of Wisdom. And this is one of my worries about this McGurgle, that he protected it so much and now he's got to try and replay it again. Then it has to lose Divine Shield and die, and then he can draw the Prime.
But he's still fine, right? I think the amount of threats he's putting forward are greatly outpacing the Juggernaut from Wire. But what's the biggest pirate out there, Raven? You'd know this better than me.
The biggest pirate out there? Not big enough is my answer. it's probably like the Stonewall, right? That's one of the big.
Maybe, yeah. Wait,
none of them are that big.
You got the same weapon again.
I think this works with Brawl though, right? I think he can Brawl and then gain a 5-drop afterwards. I'm sure that's how it works. So I remember being angry about it when it happened.
Could be huge. Oh, but the worst target for Wire survives. I also don't know what this card is.
Yeah, kind of awkward as well. Wire plays the minion there, the Sword Eater, and that weapon's just going to get changed next turn anyway, so he's literally just played a 4-mana 2/5, but again, that's going to happen for the rest of the game now, so it's not like he can just hold the minion in hand. This is slipping away, definitely for Wire. I feel like it's been slipping away for a long time, but especially with that the Mutinous play from Wire eating the Battleground Battlemaster, that's definitely slowed the game down.
It did, but inevitability is on the Paladin side here. Gregorius, 5 cards left in deck. One of those is Liadrin, which is going to fill his hand right back up, but that is a Bulwark generated. That's more time.
Push the one.
I mean, it's time for one turn because the Bulwark itself will be overridden later on, but like, you do push the one here as Wire, right? Because you're never getting that many charges on the Bulwark to activate, I think.
The time you don't, so technically there's 3 attacks, right, on the board right now for Gregorius, and a hit would take away 2 charges.
Right.
So you wouldn't then, but with Wire having 2 taunts on board as well, I think it's probably worth swinging here. Oh, he does.
I agree. Just removes a Divine Shield for free and you just kind of assume your taunts would protect, but maybe not against a Barov. Fair enough. Libram, Aldor Attendant.
Definitely his bottom card. There's never a chance, right? You can't draw anything that's going to get rid of this Libram of Hope. Oh, that's one of the bad ones.
Like Sourfang can resurrect Crush, maybe get him some more armor, but
true, yeah. That's not though.
He can kill the 5/6 with Rancor. Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, nothing adds up, does it? Because he can't make any value trade into the Devout Pupil even to just try and like make that die as well as his own minions and gain armor. Because the Devout Pupil will just one-shot each minion.
He could swing into the 10/10 and trade 5 damage into it, and then Rancor, you would gain back 4, but then the Librams just regenerate for Gregorius. It doesn't feel like a net benefit.
And the problem is he gains that from leaving the 2/4 alive, right? So It's just like, yeah, he may as well do this. He kills off one of the minions in defense. Anti-tax is a whole lot of nothing right now, so.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
Liadrin, okay.
There she is. All the Librams of Hope. I guess if there's hand space coming back, I'm not sure how many Wisdoms were played. Gets only one Hope, but that's fine. All the Wisdoms are enough, I think, to deal the lethal here.
More speed.
Long and drawn out, but in the end it goes in favor of the Libram Paladin, which I think we could expect from looking at the matchups on paper. Traditionally, mid to slow warriors have struggled versus the Paladin, which really starts getting value the longer the game goes on, and it all peaks with Lady Liadrin. If you have an answer for Liadrin, if your warrior is stacked with that much removal, then maybe we can talk, but the Brawl had to be used even before the fact.
And I think the difficulty there in that matchup specifically is that, let's be honest, the Liadrin was almost not involved in the game, right? It was one of the last cards drawn near Fatigue. So even without Liadrin, Gregorius never really looked to be in any real form of trouble. So this must be definitely a tough matchup there for the Warrior. But again, I do feel like the Warrior's there as more of a anti-aggro style deck that just happens to play a lot of minions, as opposed to being able to go toe-to-toe with the sort of heavy mid-range that Paladin has access to. But that does mean Gregorius goes 2-1 up now. And what is his last deck to get a win with? Is it the aggro druid, I think?
It is the Dreaming Drake aggro druid, which something tells me is going to struggle a lot more versus this warrior compared to the rest of Gregorius's decks. The warrior has so much AoE, they have their own minions to start trading early on in the game, a fair amount of rush capability, and then they don't just gas out in the late game because they have things like Mutinous and Sourfang.
Yeah, I'm very excited just to see how this Dreaming Drake performs. If we even see it at all, right? There's a chance that he doesn't draw it in time, but I do like this list overall. He also has a Sow the Soil, which I'll be honest, I do not know what that card does. Do you?
Yes, I do. It's a choose card. Summon a 2/2 or give your minions +1 attack.
Oh, is that what that card's called? Okay, I knew what the card was. I just didn't realize it was called that. Okay, I got the weapon, you got that. We're even.
What's the weapon called, though?
Something Maul, I think.
Okay.
But
maybe Ritual?
I knew what it did. That's all that matters, okay? From the game side. Here we are, though, diving into the next game, and it is going to be the Druid versus the Warrior. So we get to see if there's a little bit more to this Warrior than we saw from the last game. Kind of struggled a little bit, but again, with a decent amount of early game minions, with taunts, with AoE, with armor gain, you've got to say this is a better matchup, and hopefully for Wyra's sake, he can just at least even this series up.
Yeah, I think he's in a great spot here. I'm thinking that the Sword Eater is a keep, especially on the coin. It just seems like a good shaped minion. It has the effect of giving you a weapon, which, you know, we've talked about how good Park Panther can be in the Druid Mirror. It's got a similar effect to Park Panther that you can attack for 3 every turn and the body on it. So I do like the look of the Sword Eater and the quest, of course, but nothing else. Whoa, I'm wrong! Exact opposite.
Yeah, I'm kind of with... I'm not just saying this because he did it, but I think the Sword Eater might be too slow.
Okay.
Like, by the time you get... Okay, I guess he has coin, but the problem is I think by the time you get to just play a minion on turn 3 or 4 against the average Druid opening, I think that minion just gets absolutely demolished and chewed up, and then there's more pressure down the line. So I do like this. Maybe a bit more of a risky mulligan, if that makes sense, although that's a strange word to use anyway.
I mean, I'd call it a safer mulligan because what Wire did keep is the Barov Provoke combo, which is a way of activating the Barov AoE. So he's kept the a similar concept to keeping Soul Rend as Warlock versus Druid. Right. But the thing is, it's 2 cards. And there are ways that Druid can sort of make that awkward for you, like by playing multiple Divine Shields, by playing Composting so that the board clear doesn't bother them that much. But if they don't have it, like in this situation, then the Barov is insane.
Yeah, one benefit though, although he doesn't have composting, he does have double squirrel opening, right? Which acts like kind of card draw, not because it draws extra cards specifically, but because it just refills the board for free. And when you have both in the deck, then that is a lot of chances at drawing those extra minions. Park Panther though, that's about as good as it was going to get.
It is. It allows him to just one-shot down the cargo guard, push another 3 damage face, but it's not like board insurance, which was probably what Gregorius was hoping for here more than anything, because we're entering the territory where Rancor, Brawl, Barov are all doable. So he's actually going to retain his Park Panther at full health to play around Rancor better and Brawl. Misses the 3 damage face and the 2 from the 4 from the 2 minions, but it's all worth it in the name of preserving your board.
Yeah, I like this a lot, and it shows that Gregorius, even as we move towards the end of day 2, is keeping his focus, right? Because that is something that very easily could have just, maybe not been, fully thinking about all the outcomes and just traded the Park Panther in because it looks like a fantastic trade. But yeah, just keeping on top of the small things, and now he has Greybow to potentially follow up with.
But for Ryrer, the turn is less straightforward. He can play the Harbor Scamp, I suppose. Like, if he's just been holding on to the Lord Barov, like, this board still doesn't look like it warrants a big board clear, so hold on to that. Maybe he coins out a second cargo guard if he finds it. Doesn't, though, so he's just waiting.
I think I like the Barov that turn, because the biggest threat when you're playing against Druid, at least for me, is if they have a board and drop composting on it, right? That is the most terrifying thing. Other cards are scary, but the infinite card draw is the killer. So I think if he Baroved that turn, emptied the board, so there's no Arbor up, there's no composting, there's no nothing going to happen next turn. Then he has Coin Crash to respond to whatever minions Gregorius plays. So I think I would have liked to seen that just to stop the worst case scenario, which is any kind of the strong plays into a board that already exists. But he's going to do that, it appears to be, but just a turn slower.
It's a very good point you bring up, honestly, and it didn't even have to be the Coin Crash after that. It could have just been Vol'jin against whatever individual minion Gregorius plays. Like, if he just goes like Teacher's Pet, empty board there, Vol'jin's very good against that. Yeah. So I'm coming around to your line of thinking, but there wasn't the composting, so we're probably even happier that he gets to catch a Greybow in the Barov AoE as well. The Arbor Up is as good as a refill that Gregorius could have hoped for from this position, but for Wire here, the weapon plus the cargo guard lets him protect and remove the minions pretty efficiently. It's looking great for Wire, but can Gregorius pull this back with second Arbor Up? It is a lot of stats.
Yeah, I think the biggest deal as well is second Arbor Up with an Annoyatron included, at least for now. Obviously, we don't see the next draw quite yet, but the Annoyatron could be the big... There's an Acon, and this is what I said about the squirrels as well. And a Battle Guard. Huge.
It's a full board, just like that, out of nowhere.
Oh, and the Annoyatron. There's just no good way around it for Wyra, right? He just has to punch through. We saw him use the Barov with the Provoke earlier, and now it's what? Let's be honest, Brawl or Bust?
I think so, because even a Rancor top deck is not doing enough here. Vol'jin, not enough.
Bulwark, honestly, not enough.
Yeah, Bulwark, far from it as well. I mean, can he stay alive if he plays Bulwark? I don't think so. So it's going to be get your deal 2 to 2 things here. Hope it shoots the 5-1 and the 6-2.
Okay.
Killed one thing. Okay, so how much does Bulwark heal you for now? Hero Power removes 1. There's a 3-3, a 4-4, a 4-4. Sorry, and 2 4 attacks that can go face. So there would be 15 damage that could go face, barring any top decks from Gregorius. I mean, he has to do it to stay alive.
Yeah, it's horrible, but I think he just has to lock it in, right? No other choice. He's just dead otherwise.
One more turn to possibly top deck Brawl, but this is also a turn where Gregorius, even though he doesn't quite have lethal through a Bulwark as far as I can see, has the top deck of composting, possibly.
Right. Just... I think, yeah, I guess it's fine. Oracle, not really a big deal. Sometimes this card wins games by itself to an extent, but not a huge deal there.
So it is just going to be bust the Bulwark, push 15 face. I don't see any reason to trade into the 3-4. You kind of have a read on there being no Rancor in hand.
Are we back to Brawl or Bust?
I think so. we can also talk, I guess, heavy played into trade for the brawl. Oh, he trades it. Okay.
Wants the Divine Shield protection, which I can respect a lot, honestly, because this Divine Shield is a nightmare. There's just no way of getting through it. The Sword Eater, I believe, doesn't make it. The Kresh cannot get procced, so that doesn't make it either, and I think the damage is just pushed through. And that looks like game 3 going to go to Gregorius. He's going to take the victory over Wyra in a very sort of drawn out and strange set of games, but the aggro druid just getting the job done. It was just too much pressure wave after wave, and the Squirrel plus the back-to-back Arbor up was a huge deal there for Gregorius, because he was slipping away in that game just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are that many panouts where the aggro druid could get this done. I thought the warrior had too much AoE, but warrior drew kind of the legendary package of his deck. All of these individual minions that didn't really have time to come down, but we could go back and look at the turn you were talking about, going for the Barov, not to be greedy with the AoE, but to give warrior potentially a turn to be proactive, and said maybe that was what the hand was meant to do. We'll see a bit later on. Warrior going down to 5-2, it starts to get a little bit scary. I think he needs to win like 2 more series from here to guarantee top 16, maybe 1 series with good tiebreakers. But for Gregorius, amazing stuff. All he needs is 1 win to guarantee the top 16, I think.
Yep, and I am just checking here. Let's have a quick look what we're at. I believe we are going to go into another match as well. And I think we're going to check out Minislash versus Rain as we go into game number 3. So we'll just check that one out there. More matches from this round, of course. We do have 1 more round coming up for you guys today before we call it a day. And then we get to find out who our top 16 are going to be. So excited to see that, as always. Always looking forward to, that final day bracket, the final lineup we have for the end of a Masters Tour. But for now, we are jumping to Minislash versus Rain, game number 3. And just to give you a little bit of background, it looks like Minislash has already won with his Hunter against the Rogue, and then he has won with his Demon Hunter against the Rogue again. So Rogue seemingly struggling here for Rain, and then there's just this Druid left to get a victory with for Minislash. I don't suppose you know what that Druid is?
For Minislash?
Yeah.
It is an aggro druid once again.
Let's go again.
Yeah. But I really want to talk about Rain's lineup. This is a player that I have queued into on ladder many times. Rain has played this very unique face hunter, which is not the type we're used to seeing. It's like a bunch of stealth minions and then like support for just the Trampling Rhino combo, like the card that makes minions attack, or the 0-cost spell that makes it attack another time. And then he also had like Scrap Shot to buff the Rhino. He's not bringing that this time, unfortunately, but that was a spicy deck that farmed me at the end of last month. He does, however, have other spicy decks in the hand buff Paladin, as in Prismatic Jewel Kit Paladin. That's been banned away though, unfortunate. He's got his own aggro druid, but it's featuring Kazakus, so it's just nothing of the ordinary here for Rain.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Paladin. Obviously, as we can see, it has been banned away in this series, but it is kind of cool. It's like almost a throwback, right? There's High Lord 4 Dragon in there. There's Runthak. There's the First Blade of Rid. This is almost like day 1, day 2 hand buff Paladin that everyone was playing, and it was doing pretty well as well. So it's kind of cool to see that kind of resurgence just come out, and maybe that actually could just be better overall, or at least in this tournament, than the Libram Paladin we see kind of struggle in certain matchups, do well in others, but it does look like it is going to be the aggro druid versus the handlock. And how do you feel about this matchup overall, Gia? Do you think it's just the aggro beats Warlock, or is Warlock got game versus this?
My personal opinion is that the aggro druid is very slightly favored. Like, it's such a small margin that I don't mind when people call this a 50-50 matchup. But I think when played well, the aggro druid can come up with many situations similar to what we just saw versus Virer on the Quest Warrior, where you force out an awkward usage of AoE and just keep going because you have wave after wave of threat if you can get enough card draw going with composting, or maybe even sticking a peasant. I wonder if Minislash will be keeping that alongside Vibrant Squirrel. Both of those feel like very strong turn 1 plays, but when kept together, it kind of messes with your curve.
Yeah, it does a little bit, doesn't it? And we all know Peasant and Squirrel are the two most dire threats for Rain to try and deal with here. Both of them can, in their own way, run away with the game a little bit.
Meanwhile, for Rain, nothing too out of the ordinary in this handlock list, which is surprising because the rest of his decks feature at least a little bit of spice. Ends up with a Mortal Coil, which will be good to deal with the Squirrel, but Minislash did not believe in the Peasant. He's kept only the Squirrel here and has decent follow-up, you know, Neophyte on curve, not terrible, but the hand needs a bit more sustain, composting in the near future, necessary to beat Warlock, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm even wondering with what Minislash will expect Rain to do on the next turn, whether he actually goes Squirrel and Adorable next turn and then has the 1/1 Neophyte going into the next turn for Rain. He doesn't really want to block out, block the spell bonus from like a life tap turn, right?
Also, he's just tossed the quest. Sorry.
I did just notice.
We saw this from Glory and APAC Grandmasters playoffs versus Face Hunter, but I can see where that logic would extend to Aggro Druid because you are just kind of saying, I never get to play Blightborn Tamsin in these matchups anyway, and you're saying that 6 healing from the quest, not good enough. I'd rather have 1 space in hand to find Soul Rend, other small removal. I think the logic holds up. Glory did, in my short and not fully understood conversation with him, because my Japanese is not that great yet, mentioned that it is a bit more dependent on whether you go first or second and whether you have tour guide in the Face Hunter matchup. But I like to see that other players are adapting that mindset now. Right. The Gold Shard Knoll in hand also this early, like, if you played Quest, you would have -1 card in hand, right? And so that might not have been possible for Rain.
And also be about 20 turns away from completing it as well, even the first stage, right? Because it's not like you're expecting to just freely life tap in this matchup. So with the nerf going to 8 even for the first stage, yeah, I can completely get behind this. There is another Null in hand here for Rain, and now Drained Soul. So what can he do here? He could do the simple thing of Null, Tour Guide, Drained Soul, or he could even Null, Drained Soul, and then Coin as well if he wants to play a 2-drop instead.
I'm really tempted to save the Drained Soul to go along with Tamsin, but I do see your point. It might not have that much time unless he coins it out here, but if you do that, the Null might not be that cheap next turn.
What about this? Null, Bristleback. That's my crazy suggestion this turn.
Okay, die to Arbor Up.
But maybe don't die to not Arbor Up.
True.
That could help, that's something.
Well, one way or another, he's not trying to play around exactly Arbor Up. It's a more similar idea to what you said. And it does set up for a much bigger swing next turn. So we'll see what the top deck is for Minislash. Oh!
That's a good draw. Insane. I was going to say, better than Arbor Up, because of course Arbor Up would cost 6 right now, right? So he did play around that draw off the top with the Neophyte. But the composting is huge, right? And this is what I was saying earlier. In almost any matchup, the fear, it's a sort of two-pronged attack, right? Yes, aggressive early drop minions pushing damage in the first few turns. But with like the infinite card draw, it just shows up the weakness many aggro decks have, which is lack of sustain.
We're hearing from Darok that certain practice groups actually disagree with throwing Quest versus Aggro Druid. Apparently, if the Druid plays correctly and gets enough good draws to sustain, they can fatigue the Warlock, which I feel would happen if the Warlock is forced into a Soul Rend that also deletes their big threats from the deck, right? Because the idea here for Warlock is, yeah, you can technically get fatigue, but if you Soul Rend and then throw 2 6/6s and a Giant on the board after you've cleared it, you can just race the Druid. But the stars do have to align for both players to a certain extent. We'll see how this pans out. For now, the immediate problem is Minislash drawing a gazillion cards off of this composting.
And even that just doesn't matter, right? The options are so limited. Tamsin double drain sounds cool, but what's the realistic comeback here? Because what's he going to heal for? He's going to go up to 11 this turn?
Yep, and he can remove 2 things. Alive versus a top deck Arbor Up at least. but it's not looking good in terms of long-term prospects because he has all these cards that benefit from you having 10 cards or less in deck, and none of the cards that draw you to that point or even delete cards in your deck. Gonna coin out the tour guide here. I think this is fine. It's just actively challenging the minions that Minislash has right now, but this turn looks to be a trade, and then a loon pop off.
Yeah, looks like a huge refill there. Don't you dare play that mule. But yeah, there's a huge refill potential for Minislash, and then those Arbor Ups are just forever threatening lethal. I do wonder if any way he can kill Tamsin. I don't... Well, he can kill Tamsin, but I think to do this turn, I think this outweighs the Tamsin threat.
Right,
It's just a little bit scary, right, with Tamsin just living, but this board is extremely problematic here for Rain.
It is very scary if there's a Soul Rend, but if there's not, you just win, because the only way Minislash... Oh no, the quest! It's
Now,
so
let's be honest, that practice group may have been onto something, because if he'd already played the quest, he wouldn't have top-teched it right now. Gotta think about it.
I've thought about it and realized then he also wouldn't have had the Gold Shard Nolan survive to this point. The big difference is he never drew Soul Rend.
Yeah. No Soul Rend, and honestly just a lack of other removal tools, right? Even if it wasn't necessarily exactly like Soul Rend. He used and played the only Mortal Coil, I think. I think that's right. But then he's not drawn any of the touches either, I don't think. So that could have also been a potential game changer. But that's going to make that series very short and sweet for us as Minislash takes game number 3 with the Aggro Druid. And just very convincing and must be a nice victory this late in the Swiss stage. To just say, okay, who's my next match? No problem, 3-0, right, move on. So really nice and a confidence-boosting win, no doubt, for Minislash there.
Absolutely. I do feel a bit sad for Rain that with his very, very interesting lineup, the only game we got to see was his most generic deck, and it was a loss, but perhaps we'll get to see him on stream a bit later on. Currently at 5-2 score. Maybe with one more win, if the tiebreakers are good, he can break into top 16. It was a similar situation as Wire a while ago because I did my math wrong once again. We are in round 7. Apparently I can't read either because it literally just says Swiss round number 7 on the screen as well. Yeah. But yeah, it means we are entering the last round of Swiss. It is crunch time. Last chance to get your top 16. Last chance to get GM points if you're not making top 16. And it is going to be clear very, very soon who will be duking it out tomorrow.
Yeah, that's it. Round 7 is going to be over, but make sure to stay tuned because after the break, we're going to kick off round number 8. And as Gia said, the final round of the Swiss, we will find out who is going to make that top 16 by the end of today. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.